It's hockey night tonight.
What's up, guys? Welcome to a special quarantine edition of Lighting Lamp Podcast. I'm here with Steve.
Hello.
And our good friend Tim.
So,
and we are going to be doing some bracket building. We decided to have some fun with it, and we decided to take the stance of what if the NHL came back and just said standings are standings. Obviously, that's probably not what would happen since some teams have games in hand and all that, but we're just going to roll with it, and we're going to build our bracket live. You guys should be seeing on screen as I build everyone's bracket here. We also had our friend Nick who submitted a bracket, so we'll be going back and forth and discussing his. So let's just get right into it. We're just going to go round by round, team by team, and see what happens. So I guess I'm just going to pitch it out there, and then we'll just say, Steve, your pick, Tim, your pick, and then I'll say my pick and Nick's pick, and we'll kind of debate going forward. So let's start in the East. I think that's the side that we know best. And we'll start with the best team in the National Hockey League right now. The Boston Bruins are taking on your Columbus Blue Jackets in the Atlanta 1 Wildcard 2 matchup. Who do you got, and how many games you got, Steve?
I got Boston in 5.
Okay. Tim, what do you got in this matchup?
honestly, I think I would say probably Boston in 5. Just Columbus has a history of losing in fucking 5 games.
Okay, so Tim and Steve both have Boston in 5. You guys are a little bit nicer than I am. I have Boston in 4. And Nick has Boston in 5. So we're all pretty much in agreement here. More or less 4 games, 5 games. So do you guys think there's any chance for Columbus in this series at all? Or is it just pretty much a wash from the get-go here?
I mean, if this is still Columbus from last year, right? If they still have Bobrovsky, more than anything, I think they might have a chance. But their goaltending's been good, but it's inexperienced, and they really just don't have the firepower to match up with the Bruins up front or on the back end.
I just don't see Columbus winning at Boston. They're just not going to do it. They're not going to take any games away from them there. They might take a game away at home, if that. The only thing that you could bank on is Boston getting President's Trophy blues.
Yeah, because obviously it's the same, not the same Columbus Blue Jackets team. It's a very different team than we saw taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning last year. The upstart Blue Jackets who ended up reverse sweeping a team that tied for the most wins in National Hockey League history. I kind of agree, though. I don't see the same team because last year you could point to, they have, two-time Vezina winner Sergei Bobrovsky, they have one of the best players in the National Hockey League, Artemi Panarin. And obviously this team has overachieved this year, I think it's fair to say, but I don't see the same upstart potential. And I also just don't see as many holes in the Bruins lineup as I did in Tampa's lineup last year.
It would take Rask falling on his face and breaking his orbital bone before the game or something.
It would really have to be something really drastic for the Bruins to fuck that one up.
Even if Rask got hurt, you're still playing Halak.
And Halak's been solid.
I'm not taking anything away from Halak. I'm just saying, with Halak in that they have a chance compared to.
Yeah,
Tuukka.
I can understand that. Yeah.
Tuukka's leading in goals against average right now, so not that Halak's far behind, but he's best in the league for a reason.
I mean, like I said, I just don't see last year there were holes in the Lightning roster you could point to, they're not very tough, they can't really play that physical game, but you can't really say that about the Boston Bruins. I really don't see many holes in this team, so yeah, I mean that's unless you guys have any other thoughts, I think that matchup's pretty well spoken for.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty much it, right?
So next matchup's a little bit more exciting. We have your Tampa Bay Lightning and your Toronto Maple Leafs in the Atlantic Division matchup. We'll go to Tim first on this one. Who do you have and how many games?
Oh my god.
I think that's everyone's reaction to this series.
You know what? Honestly, I think I've got Toronto. I think Austin Matthews steps up and he fucking solidifies himself as a great player as a top 5 player in the NHL in the playoffs.
How many games?
I honestly think it'd have to go to 6.
Toronto in 6. What do you got, Steve?
I got Tampa in 6. I just think Tampa, what they did at the deadline, really added a lot, and Toronto's shown they have a hard time defending as it is. And now you've got a team that pretty much has, I mean, the biggest hole is they lost Steven Stamkos, but they still have Kucherov and Point and a bunch of other talent that really I don't think the Maple Leafs are going to be able to handle.
They've also shown through the years that they don't need Stamkos.
That's true. It's very true.
So Steve's got Tampa in 6. Tim's got Toronto in 6. I have Tampa Bay in 7. Nick Stelling has Tampa Bay in 7. Explain yourself, Tim. You're the only one here who's back in Toronto. How do you feel?
I honestly think you have an all-star lineup that's just gonna show up. I think that they've been dicking around, like they dicked around like half the season. Honestly, like, let's be really good. They lost so many games, like they were losing games. It's like, why the fuck are you losing to like the Montreal Canadiens? Why are you losing to the Sabres?
Do you have any questions about their ability to play the heavy game against a team that Tampa Bay this year at the trade deadline, you know, last they signed Pat Maroon in the offseason. They have Anthony Cirelli. They got Blake Coleman. They got Barclay Goodrow. They still have Victor Hedman. Do you have any reservations about maybe Toronto getting physically run out of the series?
Honestly, not really. I honestly think that they're just not going to play the physical game. I think that they're just going to try and speed past them. And, like, that's hard to say because Tampa is just dumb fast, like, despite their size. But I honestly think that you're just going to have a bunch of young talent and superstars who want to win finally. I'm really banking off, like, the will of Toronto on this, honestly.
I think the reason I put Tampa in 7 is I think this is probably the closest or the second closest matchup in the opening round here. I think, in my opinion, the closest matchup is going to be Edmonton-Calgary, but I think you have two very similar teams. The reason that I like Tampa over Toronto is I think Tampa does everything Toronto does. I think they just do it a little bit better. They're just as good offensively. They're much better defensively. They're stronger. They're harder in the corners, and they have obviously picking between Freddie Anderson and Vasilevsky is like picking, do you want a golden apple or a golden orange? But I think in a 7-game series, I would rather have Vasilevsky, maybe. So I don't know. I think it's close. What do you think about this, Steve?
I'm kind of with you. I just think that like Tampa does everything Toronto does and just does it better. And that's really going to be hard to overcome for a Toronto team that, like I said, like has a hard time defending as it is. And they don't have Morgan Riley right now. He should be back for the playoffs, but he won't be 100%. So, do I think a Toronto with a significantly diminished Morgan Riley can take on a team that does everything better than they do, essentially? I'm not feeling confident. I mean, with Frederik Andersen, though, you can never really... If he gets hot enough, he might be able to steal a game and be enough to force the win out of the series. But, I don't know.
I actually have a point of interest. I actually forgot. Are we doing this based off the playoffs if they happened or if they're going to happen?
We're saying, like, if the playoffs started,
Today.
Today. Like, if it came back tomorrow and it was like, so all these guys that are currently injured would still be hurt.
How long was Morgan Riley out for?
A couple weeks, I think. So I think they said he, during the course of the regular season, he would have been back at the start of the playoffs. So he would be back, in our universe, probably mid-second round.
Okay.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you, though. Can I see Toronto winning this series? Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think nobody would be surprised if they did.
You know what? How many more times can Tavares really go and not do anything? Not that he didn't do anything, but how can he not win? How many more times can he really let his team get through with that?
Yeah,
I think as I said, I think you're banking a lot off just the will of these players, like these name players on Toronto, to just really show up and play.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing we've seen with Toronto all year is they always lose when you expect them to win. They win when you expect them to lose. They're such a weird, inconsistent, aggravating team for these Toronto Maple Leafs fans because they'll go and they'll beat Tampa Bay 5-2 in Tampa Bay, and then they'll come up home and drop a stinker for nothing to the Montreal Canadiens. Doesn't make any sense.
I really think at this point, like, when Toronto got hot and was playing well, they were probably just as hard to beat as either of those other top two teams. But like Toronto's shown they really, like, they're just so hot and cold this season. Like, they're just running so.
And that's why I think it, honestly, I don't really know like what goes on in that locker room, but if morale has anything to do with it, I think that in the playoffs they would come together.
You kind of hope, right?
I think JT steps up as captain. He's done this. He's done this before. This isn't his first rodeo. He's gonna do it.
Yeah, I mean, you also taking into account they've bought guys on the roster who know how to win and have been there before. I mean, Jack Campbell, sure, he's still young. He doesn't really know how to win, but you've got a guy like Kyle Clifford, two-time Stanley Cup champion. Jake Muzzin, I think he's also two-time Stanley Cup champion with the LA Kings. They have guys on the roster that have been there before, but I think the Tampa Bay Lightning roster as a whole, learned a really harsh lesson last year that you can't just walk into the playoffs and expect to be the best team. But like I said, would it surprise me if Toronto won? No. I think what we can all agree on, though, is that this would be a series to watch because these are going to be like 4 to 5, 5 to 6 style hockey games, which would be just an electrifying series. But yeah, listen, I'm not going to disagree with you. If Toronto won, it would not surprise me. That's.
You know what? Also, not that they don't have phenomenal centers on Tampa, but when your top three centers are JT, Austin Matthews, and Jason Spezza, you're really not looking to win many faceoffs.
Yeah, I mean, if you're matching center for center, you've got JT and Austin Matthews 1-2, but I think JT, he also hasn't been the same player this year, and I don't know if he's playing hurt. I don't know if there's a nagging injury that's been bugging him. He hasn't looked the same, especially since splitting him and Mitch Marner up. I don't know. He hasn't been the same player this year.
I'm telling you, I think there's a virus in that locker room. Get it?
I mean, with his hand, when he broke his hand earlier this year, it was out for a while. Like, that's not an easy injury to come back from.
No. Yeah.
Fair.
I think suffice to say, though, that this would be quite a series, and it could go either way, I think.
Yeah.
So, do you guys have any final thoughts on Tampa-Toronto?
Nah, I think I've said my.
Yeah, I think we...
Next matchup here, we've got Metro 1, your Washington Capitals, taking on your wildcard 1, the Carolina Hurricanes. We'll go back to Steve to go first. Steve, who you got? How many?
Hurricanes in 7.
Ooh.
I just think they have their number, and the Capitals' goaltending has been iffy, and I know that Carolina's goaltending is iffy, but I think that they know they can do it. They did it last year, and I think that's a big boost for a young team, knowing they've done it, and they've only gotten better. I mean, adding
Vinny Trocheck.
Vinny Trocheck, Brady Shea, it really added more to that lineup.
Very interesting.
But, like I said, would I be totally surprised if Washington won? Absolutely not. I'm expecting to be wrong. But, I think Carolina can do it if given the rights, they play well enough.
All right. What do you got, Tim? Hit me.
Honestly, I love the Carolina Hurricanes, but with that goalie situation that they've got going on, I really just have the Capitals at 5.
Capitals in 5. Okay.
I think they take the first home game. They think that they have the morale back. Everyone gets excited, and then they just shit the bed.
I have Capitals in 6, and our buddy Nick has Caps in 7. But I do want to talk about the Carolina Hurricanes because in our world, Dougie Hamilton would still be hurt, I think, for at least the first series. And they haven't been the same team with him out. But it's a good point. I don't feel very good about the Capitals this year because Braden Holtby has not been Braden Holtby, and Ilya Samsonov, it's his rookie season, and even he hasn't been that fantastic. So I don't know if I really feel great about the Washington Capitals this year.
I know their roster, everything else has been really good for them. I don't think they're as deep a team as they used to be, but I mean, you still really can't bet against Ovi. But yeah, that goaltending has been kind of iffy.
I think Svechnikov's taken a big step forward this year. Sebastian Aho is a great player. I was one of the only people last year who put the Hurricanes over the Capitals. I think among our friends group, I was the only one who put the Hurricanes over the Capitals last year. I just don't feel as good about the Hurricanes this year because, I mean, they're having the same kind of issues. Their goaltending is not where it needs to be. And I think there's something to be said about a guy like Braden Holtby. I would feel more confident about saying Braden Holtby hits the playoffs and gets hot than Peter Mrazek or James Reimer hit the playoffs and get hot.
But if
Or
they
even get
there.
back. Yeah.
Like, my point stands purely on that. Otherwise, I think the Carolina Hurricanes are a solid 4-line team.
Do you have any worries about their defense minus Dougie Hamilton?
Yeah, but I think they could get away with it for a round if they had to. Because like they're still not bad. I mean, they still have Brett Pesce. They still have Jacob Slavin. You know, it's not like they have slouches back there now. It's just that they don't have Dougie Hamilton.
Yeah, I mean, just
But wait, but they also got Braden Shea. So, you know,
Brady Shea.
yeah. So, you know, that's a -5 according to our friend group.
He's had some growing pains with them. In the first couple of games with the Hurricanes, he's not been very good. I don't know, because like I said, last year I picked this team, the Carolina Hurricanes, over the Capitals in 7, and that's what it ended up being. But there's something different about this team. I like the addition of Vinny Trocheck. I like the addition of Brady Shea. I really do. I know there's a lot of questions around him, but I like the addition of Brady Shea to that back end. I like them having bought in Joel Edmondson. He adds a little bit more grit and grind sandpaper on that back end that they didn't have before with Justin Falk. But I think the Capitals are almost a perfect team again, just minus the goaltending situation. And who knows? Like I said, I would feel more confident about flipping the dice or rolling the dice and saying, well, Holtby can get hot, instead of saying, well, Peter Mrazek can get hot. And again, I know this is a team that last year made the Eastern Conference Finals, but I don't know. I'm not feeling it this year. But again, it's one of those situations. Would it surprise me if the Hurricanes won? No, not that much. A little bit, but not that much. Do you guys have any last comments on that series?
No, I think that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah, I mean, Carolina's got goaltending issues.
Still haven't addressed that. This is a great series. I've been wanting to see the rematch of this series for a long time. We haven't seen the Battle of Pittsburgh in the playoffs in quite a while. Metro 2, your Philadelphia Flyers, against Metro 3, your Pittsburgh Penguins. Tim, we'll go back to you on this one.
So, the issue is the Flyers' stats at home are ridiculous. So, I don't take Pittsburgh in either of those games. So, let's say Pittsburgh.
You're playing
wins.
5 out of.
Yeah, you're looking to win 6. You're looking for 6 games minimum, almost.
And you're playing 4 of them in Philly.
Yeah. So I say maybe they would take 1. I've got Flyers in 7.
Okay, all right. Feeling it. Go to Steve.
I've got Philly in 7.
All right, matching up here.
Pittsburgh's just got a lot of injuries that I don't think that wouldn't be resolved. I mean, Jake Gensel's still out, and their goaltending also has been kind of strange this season. I mean, Jari's been really good, but Matt Murray hasn't. So do you start Tristan Jarry over Matt Murray in the playoffs? There's a lot of question marks in Pittsburgh, I think.
Okay, so we all agree. I have Philly in 7. Nick has Pittsburgh in 6. So obviously we all agree that Philly's going to win, but is there a world in which we could see the Pittsburgh Penguins winning this series?
Sid the Kid.
Yeah, I mean, I could see them doing it. Philly, for all intents and purposes, is a young team that doesn't have a lot of experience outside of like a couple of key players. So I
Like-
mean, I could totally see it.
Honestly, Sidney Crosby's easily one of the most, if not the most dominant player in the league. Like you can't stop him. Even if he's just yelling from the bench, he's like on the ice at all times. And he's dangerous at all times.
Yeah. Do you think that the addition of a guy like Jason Zucker puts them on that next level of back to getting to Stanley Cup champion? Because clearly that's the intention of this trade, is to give somebody to play with Crosby again. And since you've been bought over, Jason Zucker and Sidney Crosby have connected on a number of goals already. Can you see a world in which that puts them on that next level? Or are we looking at the Pittsburgh Penguins as they're a good team, but they're not Stanley Cup champion material?
I think it's the latter. I think they're a good team. I don't think they can win a Stanley Cup right now.
I also don't agree that they could win the cup, but I think that just like you could never count out Ovi, I don't think you could ever count out Sid. And if they did make it to the cup, we'd all just say it was Sid. He did Sid thins.
Yeah. Well, what's holding them back this year, do you think?
A lack of
think-
depth.
Yeah, I was just gonna say their depth is doo doo. Like I think
Especially on the
I think
back
half
end.
their team has like less than 20 points.
Yeah,
If not
they're
more.
they're scoring by committee mostly, and that's fine. But losing Jake Gensel really hurts. Like no matter how you put it, it just really hurts. So, and their defense isn't. I mean, they have Justin Schultz, Brian Dumoulin, and Chris Letang, and then after that, it kind of drops off. You have John Marino, and then Jack Johnson, who's not
you know
the
what's
same
funny?
player he used to be.
It's mostly defensemen that have most of the points in their team.
I believe it.
Do you have any question about Carter Hart entering his first playoffs?
No.
No, he's shown he can handle pressure. I mean, he's playing in a pressure cooker already that's in Philly, you know.
And he's starting at home, so I think that'll be like settling for him.
I mean, Philly can be a really hostile crowd, especially if they come out flat. But I think he can handle it. I
That's
mean, I
what-
think he'll be fine.
That's what I'm saying. I think that being at home is a lot easier than going on the road for your first game. Not that it's on the road, but like not his stadium, not his crowd.
I think the other thing is like he's played in big games before. I mean, he won a gold medal with Canada, so it's not like he hasn't been on big stages. I would just be really excited because I mean, the last time these two teams played, that series was an absolute barn burner.
I think that was the series that James Neal elbowed Claude Giroux in the head like 3 times.
Yeah, every game ended like 8-4, 8-5. There was like a 10-goal game in there at one point.
Yeah, that was back in the day with Ilya Brizgalov being in the Flyers organization.
Listen, Brizgalov was okay. He wasn't bad. That wasn't his fault.
So I do
You
want
just-
to.
You have a crush on him.
Nah, bro, their team just was hemorrhaging. Neither
Space.
team was interested in playing
It
hockey.
is space.
Yeah, space. Because okay, but let me ask you this: because Nick has Pittsburgh in 6.
Right?
So, you guys saying, the Flyers are going to win in 7 games. If the series comes out and Pittsburgh wins one of the first 2 at home and basically resets the stage, do you feel more confident in saying that Pittsburgh would win, or are you saying... Let me rephrase. Are you guys saying the Flyers are going to win because of home ice advantage, or that they're just a better team?
I think they're just a better team, but I think that at some point the home ice does factor in because they're almost unstoppable on home ice this year.
It's kind of it. It's like they're a better team, so I'd give them the win for that. But I think the trump card is the fact that they're home.
Yeah, I agree. I love the Flyers. You guys know I've been really high on the Flyers this year. I love their defense. I think it's probably one of the best defenses in the league. They've gotten really good years out of guys like Travis Konechny, Sanheim, Provorov. Gostis Bear's kind of taken a step back, but Carter Hart's really been the guy that they've needed him to be. So I agree. We're all saying Philly in 7, except for Nick, who has Pittsburgh in 6. So we're going to hop over to the Western Conference here. Your Central 1, St. Louis Blues, and your Wild Card 2, Nashville Predators. Who did I go to last? Steve? Tim? I don't know. So we'll go to Steve for this one.
I got St. Louis in 5. I don't think Nashville's the same team.
St. Louis in 5. How do you feel, Tim?
I have bet on Pecorine and Nashville. Middle school. I'm done with them. I've got the St. Louis Blues in 4, and I don't even want to talk about it. I hate them.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I kind of agree. I have St. Louis in 5. Not very confident about the Predators' chances. Nick has St. Louis in 6. Man, when you talk about this series, a couple of years ago, this would have been, oh my god, the Pecorine, Yaroslav Halak, or Pecorine peak Brian Elliott matchup, and now it's, oh my god, it's Jordan Binnington, and oh my god, Pecorine has a 3-point something goals against average and a .8 something save percentage. Do you think there's any chance at all that Rene can get hot in the playoffs? Or you think that this is just who Rene is this year?
I think he's just notorious for shitting the bed.
He's been an underperformer in his career, yeah. So I just think that overall, even if Rene gets hot, that team just can't hang with St. Louis. I mean, St. Louis is just so big and strong, and they're pretty talented up front, and their decor is just, I mean, it far outclasses Nashville's, which 2-3 years ago was probably the best in the league.
So what do you think really is the Predators' issue coming in here? Do you think it's the offense, it's the defense? I mean, obviously the goaltending is a big problem, but because in my opinion, when they lost PK Subban, they lost a little bit of that flair, a little bit of that pizzazz on the back end, right? And that clearly has hurt the team, and instead of adding another defenseman, they decided to invest that money in Matt Duchene, who, I mean, I know Steve and I have talked about at length that Matt Duchene cannot be the guy. He's proven repeatedly being the guy is not within his realm of ability, but because I picked the Predators, I think, in the beginning of the season to be a wild card team. I'm not in love with this team. I don't like Matt Duchene as a focal point of your offense. I think he's a great supporting cast member, but when it's like he's our new top line center, he's the guy that's supposed to run the offense, it feels like every guy they bring into Nashville to be the guy doesn't work out. I mean, Ryan Johansson was supposed to be it, then Victor Arvidsson, Matt Duchene. I don't know. I mean, is there any saving grace for Nashville, or do you think there's almost no chance that they win this series?
I mean, Nashville's biggest thing was that they got an overwhelming contribution from the back end on offense, and they're just not getting it. I mean, to be fair, Ryan Ellis has missed time because of that concussion. Roman Yossi's been fine, but like overall, their defense doesn't look the same, and they're looking to get a lot of big things out of guys like Dante Fabro, who's a rookie this year. And I think that's a big issue. And I mean, talent for talent, like up front, they might be a more talented team than St. Louis, right? I mean, they have Philip Forsberg and Matt Duchene and, guys that have a little more flair than St. Louis does, but I just don't think they're going to be able to handle the type of hockey that St. Louis is bringing in for them.
That's the thing. St. Louis is big and fast. They're just a big, aggressive motherfuckers.
They kind of are. And, like, Nashville isn't. Nashville's big, and they're kind of fast, but St. Louis has also just been there before. They know what it takes,
They're going to come flying out.
They won a second Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this series is more or less, wrapped up in a bow for St. Louis. It's a pretty easy pick there. So we're going to move on to the next Central Division matchup, which I am super excited about. Your Colorado Avalanche and your Dallas Stars. Tim, this is an exciting series. Who do you got?
I love Colorado. Colorado's my team. I would have to go with them.
Colorado
The
in
issue is-
how many?
The only issue is these lurking injuries that could bring them back a step. So you could say that Dallas could win, honestly, pretty quickly, but I don't know. I have Colorado in 6.
6 games. Who do you got, Steve?
I got Dallas in 7.
Fair.
Okay.
I just think Colorado has those injuries up front with Nazem Kadri and Miko Rantanen being out. And I just think Dallas is starting to find their stride now, and they've been relatively hot coming into what would be the start of the playoffs. And I can't bet against Ben Bishop. I mean, the guy's just a monster.
How many? Dallas and how many again?
7.
Dallas and 7. Okay. Yeah, so I had Dallas in 7 as well. Our friend has Colorado in 7, so we have Colorado in 7, Colorado in 6, and then Steve and I with Dallas in 7. Clearly, this is a close matchup. The reason I picked Dallas in 7 is I think Dallas suffers from the same thing that they had last year. I'm sure you guys remember me talking, like YouTube person remember me talking about, well, I'm going to pick the Nashville Predators, but I mean, Dallas at the beginning of the year had such a bad year that I don't think their record reflects who they are. And I feel the same way this year. I think they had such a terrible beginning, a mediocre beginning of the year. Steve and I were talking on this podcast, like, what is wrong with the Dallas Stars? What do they need to do to fix it? I think their record doesn't reflect who they are. And I know they've struggled coming down the stretch as well, but I mean, I think they've addressed their issues from last year that kept them from... I mean, these guys took St. Louis to Game 7 overtime. And I think they've addressed the problems. I think, sure, you lose a guy like Matt Zuccarello, you lose a guy like Jason Spezza, so you lose a little bit of depth scoring, but you add Joe Pavelski, you add Corey Perry, guys that play with a little bit more edge, they walk that line. Rupe Hintz has had a great year. Denis Guryanov's had a great rookie year. I love Dallas's defense, and the question that I want to pose to you guys, the biggest reason that I'm picking Dallas over Colorado, how do we feel about Philip Grubauer if he's healthy?
That was actually going to be my next point after Steve said the Ben Bishop comment. How you bet a Ben against Grubauer if he's good.
Grubauer
because he's very young.
Start. I mean, Grubauer's proven he's a capable starter. It's just that he's running into Ben Bishop, you know? So it's hard to bet against Ben Bishop, who, like you said, got them to Game 7 overtime with the St. Louis Blues last year.
Do we feel any issue with, specifically Tim, because you picked Colorado, do you feel any issue with Grubauer's, this is, I think, like going to be his first go-round, or first or second go-around, I think, as the starter of the Colorado Avalanche going up against the Dallas Stars? Because last year they played the Flames, and they just smoked the Flames in 5 games, but yeah, do you feel that there's any issue having Philip Grubauer as your number 1 starter going into the playoffs?
No. I wouldn't be worried about it at all. Colorado's home ice advantage, right?
Yes.
I'm a big proponent of home ice advantage to start, especially if you have a shaking-legged goalie, like you're saying. I think that he'll have the confidence and he'll just do it.
Well, I can't disagree in the fact that let's not beat around the bush here. Ben Bishop is an elite goaltender, but he lets in some stinkers. He's had a tendency to let in some real squeakers. He's got a massive 5-hole. I mean, that's part of just being big, but
he's got the Henrik Lundqvist treatment.
Like, he just has some real stinker goals at some terrible times, and you sit there and you're like, oh my god, what is this guy doing? But I don't know. I feel like the biggest drawback from Dallas is their depth. Goal scoring is not great. I'm going to give you that. But I think Dallas can mold the game. They play a heavier game, a more physical game than Colorado does. And I love Colorado's team. I think I would be more confident saying they would win if they had a more established, I'm not going to say better, a more established goaltender in the crease. I mean, we know Cale Makar can play in the playoffs. We know all these guys can play in the playoffs. I just don't know that they can really play that way against Dallas's defense this year. I think Dallas's defense is too good.
I just
That's fair.
think I would. I just don't think you could. You put anyone out there against Nathan McKinnon and he'll score.
That's pretty true. I mean,
Like you could literally put out 5 John Carlsons out there and say, go out there and it's Nathan McKinnon, and we could put any person out there with him. You or I could go out there with him.
do you guys feel? Because you guys didn't pick Dallas to win last year, did you? I think one of you did win the first round. Do you think
Well,
that?
they got to the.
Sorry, what was that?
Yeah. No, go ahead. Sorry, I was confused.
Well, I was just gonna say, do you feel like if Dallas can manage, because Dallas is clearly gonna play a more physical game. They have up and down the lineup. They have heavy hitters. Jamie Benn, Corey Perry walks the line. His name Joe Pavelski walks that line. Essa Lindell, John Klingberg. These guys, they're not necessarily hitters, but they're big, heavy, tough defensemen. Whereas Colorado's back end tends to be a little bit more fleet of foot, a little bit more lighter on the puck. Do you see an issue with having your biggest grit and grind a presence really coming from a second line center in Nazem Kadri? Do you think that that's going to be an issue in this series? Oh, did we leg out here? Might have legged out. Hold on, guys. Technical difficulties
Happened.
here. Oh, there we go. You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, sorry. Had a little bit of a lag spike there. Question was, do you think there's any issue with Colorado's grit and grind and sandpaper type players?
If Nazem Kadri was playing, I'd say no. But he's not.
That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of experience on this Dallas team. You bring in a guy like Corey Perry, who's been there, done that, won the Stanley Cup. Guy like Joe Pavelski, who's not won the Stanley Cup, obviously, but been there, done that. I feel like there's just more experience, but would it surprise me if Colorado won? No. I mean, how can you bet against that team, Well, I mean, I'm betting against that team, but, any final thoughts on Central Division Series there?
No, I
Yeah.
think we pretty much summed that up, yeah.
Okay, now this is also a very, very interesting series. We'll go to Steve on this one. Pacific Division 1, Vegas Golden Knights, Wildcard 1, Winnipeg Jets. Who do you got?
Winnipeg Jets in 6.
Okay. Winnipeg in 6. Tim, how are we feeling? It's a lot harder than you would think a wild card matchup should be.
No, not really. This is supposed to be a really good matchup. I have Winnipeg in. I have Winnipeg in 5. I just don't believe in the Knights.
Ooh. Okay.
I like. I hate them.
You hate the Vegas Golden Knights.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have Winnipeg as well. I have Winnipeg in 7 games. And our friend has Winnipeg in 6. So we're all in agreement. Winnipeg Jets are going to win this series. Why? Why do we feel Winnipeg's winning this series?
Because what is Vegas? I mean, like, what
That
does
was
that team
aggressive.
do particularly well that Winnipeg doesn't? Winnipeg's a big, heavy forechecking team. Yeah, they have some question marks on defense, but so does Vegas. And they have the one answer that they need, and that their goaltender has been unbelievable this
dog.
season. What?
I was saying Hellebuck.
Yeah, he's been the only. I mean, both of Vegas's goaltenders have been kind of iffy. I mean, they have Robin Leonard now, but up to that point, they had Marc-Andre Fleury, who hasn't looked like Fleury. Hasn't looked like Fleury's looked since he's gone to Vegas, and then Malcolm Subban also struggling. So you end up with this like kind of like Flurry could do it if he got hot, but like, are you gonna bet against Hellebuck who is red hot? You know?
So Vegas added Alec Martinez, who we all know very well here, and Robin Leonard at the trade deadline. Do you feel confident? I mean, obviously you feel somewhat confident, but do you feel confident in Winnipeg's back end to hold down against guys like Max Pacioretty, Mark Stone, William Karlsson?
Yeah, because they've been playing a lot of Central Division games against better teams and been holding up pretty okay. I
I
mean,
also think that Winnipeg's a very they're a big back checking defensive team. Like their forwards are just too big to not be playing defense with them.
Well, there has been a lot of talk this year about Patrick Laine specifically being very into the back check this year. He's gotten very good at defense. But I do want to ask you this question. If you're Vegas, who are you starting in game one? Are you starting Marc-Andre Fleury? Are you starting Robin Leonard?
you kind of have to start Flurry.
You
You
don't
kind of just have to.
you don't think there's any chance they could start Robin Leonard?
I
I
mean,
think that they could.
they could. I think if given the playoffs had like we'd actually finished the season normally, and they had a chance to play, maybe Leonard takes that from him, right? But I think right now, starting today, Fleury's got to get it because it's been his net all year anyway.
That's kind of it. It's just, as he said, he hasn't been there long enough to warrant playing the playoff series. Lander, that is.
I mean, like that's being said, like if Fleury, falls on his face, I wouldn't hesitate to throw in Robin Leonard.
Yeah, I'd pull him as soon as he started playing bad. But Fleury played the last couple games of the season, so I wouldn't expect it to not play.
I was actually just gonna ask, how short of a leash do you think he's on? One bad game, two bad games, a bad period?
No, definitely not a bad period. But how bad? I think if they went out and scored 3 goals unanswered, I think they pull him.
Yeah, I mean it's just a big question mark for me.
They did in Pittsburgh.
I feel like Winnipeg's biggest strength is that they probably have one of the most talented forward cores in the National Hockey League. I mean, up and down, you got Patrick Laine, Blake Wheeler, Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connors had a great year. And then on the back end, you've got some pieces that are really starting to come together. Neil Pionk's had a pretty good year. Josh Morrissey's had a pretty good year. And I mean, Connor Hellebuck, if he was on any other team, would probably have a sub 2.5 goals against average, just from the way he's been playing. Do you feel there's any chance for Vegas in this series, or are you more or less like it's just locked down, Winnipeg's going to the next round?
I just think Winnipeg is better. I just don't like this Vegas team, and I don't like the construction of it, to be honest.
Do you think there's any chance, Tim, or is it's just Winnipeg's taking this?
No, there's definitely a chance. Like we said, if Fleury comes out and plays a solid game, and we've seen the Knights literally from the start of their birth as a team coming out and playing strong in the playoffs, so I could easily see Vegas taking it to 7 games and winning.
It's a very interesting series, that's for sure, and we all love the Winnipeg Whiteout, one of the best traditions in hockey, in my opinion. I love the Bell MTS Center, the loudest building in the league, according to multiple sources. It'll be a very exciting time. But speaking of exciting, I don't know what matchup you guys are most excited for. Let's before we go on, what's your most excited matchup in the first round? Because this is mine here, the Battle of Alberta, Edmonton Calgary is my matchup to look at for.
Mine's probably the Tampa Toronto series.
Yeah, I think I'd honestly go Tampa Toronto, or I might even say the Washington or the Philly Pittsburgh one would be really good.
I mean, either way, if you look at this bracket, this is chock full of bangers. Who did I go to last? It was Tim, right? Because he said he hate.
Yeah.
So Steve, Edmonton, Calgary, two teams with a lot of history this regular season. We've all seen the Battle of Alberta get bloody and bruising once again. Who comes out on top?
As much as I hate to admit it, probably the Edmonton Oilers.
We've got Oilers in...
Probably 6.
Oilers in 6. Okay. Tim, how we feeling? Battle of Alberta.
Oilers in 4. They sweep them.
Whoa. Whoa.
Yeah. Tell me about
Okay.
it. You
Okay.
have superhuman Connor McDavid back there. He's hungry. He wants the playoffs. He's been waiting. And you have horseboy Leon Draisaitl, who's literally just gonna skate through and past everything. And I don't believe in the Calgary Flame. I just don't.
I just don't know what to make of Calgary for me to feel confident betting on them.
So,
I
like,
thought they were going to be much better this year than they were, so I'm already kind of not feeling great about them.
that's just it. Like they lose to, like, I think that they lost to Phoenix. They lose to the Panthers. Like, why are you losing these teams?
Well, I also have Edmonton in 6. Nick has Edmonton in 6. We all agree here, Edmonton in 6, except for Tim, who's calling for the sweep. Let's talk about how big of an impact is the Connor McDavid effect in this series.
Pretty big.
I think
Like-
it's huge.
I think obviously Connor McDavid's the best player in the National Hockey League, but that hunger, that drive to be successful in Edmonton, I think is going to play a huge impact.
I don't know if he's going to be any hungrier than he is normally. I just think, like, he himself is able to take over and win hockey games in a way nobody else in the league is. You
Yeah.
know?
The issue is, like, the second he steps on the ice, he could literally be anywhere, and he's a threat. Not to say that, like, other players aren't, because, as I said earlier, Sid is definitely a threat everywhere. But Connor McDavid is such a technical player. He just does everything better.
Whenever Connor McDavid touches the puck on the ice, he instantly becomes the biggest threat.
His only
could be-
caveat is his defense is a little choppy sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, he could pick the puck up behind his own net and he's instantly a threat. Like, he has the puck and he can skate. Like, it's kind of over.
Do we have any qualms about Mike Smith and Mikko Koskinen?
Yes, huge. But I don't think Calgary's answers in net are any better.
You mean Mike shit?
I mean, Calgary's got Dave is throwing at you, Cam Talbot, and
Big save, Dave.
yeah. So I mean, I like Riddick, but I don't know, man. Both these teams do not have great goaltending coming into this matchup.
Is it fair to say that both these teams do very similar things very well? It's just that Edmonton does the big thing better, which is their goaltending both this season at least. Obviously, we like Riddick a little bit better, but as a tandem, it's like, it's pretty much even. Defense, it's like, all right, Giordano took a huge step back, but that's to be expected at his age. Still got TJ Brody, Hamonic when he's healthy. Okay, all right, we're seeing this come together. Obviously, Ethan Bear has been huge for the Edmonton Oilers. But then it just comes down to offense, and it's like, who do you match up against Connor McDavid?
The issue is Johnny Hockey is just Johnny Gaudreau now.
Yeah, he hasn't been as dynamic as he was, and Sean Monahan's been kind of pedestrian this year too. And in order to, I mean, to have McDavid and Draisaitl and the ability to put them on the ice together at any point kind of breaks the game in Edmonton's favor. If they were playing a better team, it'd be a different story. If they were playing a St. Louis or, something like that, it'd be kind of a different story.
I think Draisaitl has more points. I think Draisaitl and McDavid have more points than, like, the top 5 players on Calgary combined.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with Calgary this year. We've been talking about what's up with Johnny Gaudreau hasn't been the same. What's up with Sean Monahan? Matthew Tkachuk's been great for them. I mean, I love Matthew Tkachuk. Very big fan of his. But I agree. I look at that Calgary defense, and I don't see a Victor Hedman or an Alex Pietrangelo or a John Carlson that can... You're never going to shut down Connor McDavid, but those guys can at least mitigate the damage he's going to do. I don't see a guy like that.
Him. You can cover him and push him to the outside.
Right, like, but I don't see a defenseman on Calgary that's going to do that. I mean, Mark Giordano was supposed to be that guy, but he had a big step back this year. He's getting up there in age, and I just think, do you guys see in any situation? Obviously, I would like to think the Flames are a little bit more of a grindier team. The Oilers added guys like Tyler Ennis and Andreas Athanasiou to round out their offense, but if this turns into a bloodfest, which all signs point to it likely will, do you still think that the Oilers have as good a chance if this turns into an absolute slugfest, puck in the corners, battles out in front of the net? Did you see that maybe trending in Calgary's favor, or do you think Edmonton's just too good?
I mean, Edmonton's not afraid to play a heavy game. I mean, their bottom six is big. Their defense isn't particularly dynamic. So I don't see why they wouldn't play in a fashion that's already kind of like that. I mean, this whole season's been kind of forecheck heavy, very like get the puck in and cycle it from the Edmonton's aspect. I mean, for everybody that isn't Connor McDavid, right? Connor McDavid's whole idea is to get in and score on the rush. But like everybody else on this team has been playing a very like simple forecheck heavy game, and I don't see why that would change against Calgary.
Yeah, like who do you really put on? Who's gonna really stop Leon Draisaitl? Like realistically, who's?
Me.
Yeah, right.
Well, I mean,
like
it's a good question though, because like I said, they don't have a Victor Hedman or an Alex Pietrangelo type defenseman.
like no one can even skate with him.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a tough draw. I mean, we all pretty much agree that Edmonton's going to take this series, but I mean, I think no matter what, it's going to be an exciting series for sure. Would it surprise you guys if Calgary won, or would it just be kind of like, okay, I can see why?
I would be surprised if Calgary won. I wouldn't be surprised if they brought it to like 6 or 7 games though.
I wouldn't be surprised if Calgary won, because earlier this year I thought they were going to win the division. So clearly I thought something was there in that roster that could do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting team. It's like you said, it's one of those teams that's very hard to kind of make up what happened there. But all right, so round 1 complete. We're gonna go into round 2. We'll start with Tim. Your second round matchup in the East: Boston, Toronto, the three-peat. No, the fourth time, right? Fourth time, I think.
I just have Boston.
You have Boston taking out Toronto yet again. You're gonna do that to Toronto fans. How many games we got?
Honestly, I think that they. Actually, nah. I've got Toronto at 7. I'm changing my answer.
Change of heart at the last second. Toronto Maple Leafs take it in 7 games.
Mostly because Pastrnak's a fucking stat patter and his stats are doo-doo.
So we have Toronto in 7. All right, so obviously since our matchups are going to go, it'll be a little different. We will come back and talk about each guy's specific matchups. Steve, your second round matchup is Boston-Tampa Bay.
Right. I got Tampa in 7.
Tampa Bay in 7 games. My second round matchup is the same as yours. I have Boston, Tampa Bay, and I as well. I'm taking your Tampa Bay Lightning to the Eastern Conference Finals in 7 games. Our friend Nick said Boston in 7 over Tampa Bay. So 3 of us have Boston, Tampa Bay. But Tim, let's talk about Boston, Toronto, because I think if my memory serves me, this would be the 4th time in like 8 years that these teams have meeting. And this time you have the Maple Leafs getting over the hump in 7 games. Why do you feel so good about the Maple Leafs this year?
Because they're supposed to be good. And they're not. And like I don't know how to explain that, but it's one of those things like that they've been supposed to. You can only supposed to do it for so long before you actually do it.
The law of inevitability. I mean, it's true.
Like,
how many times can you fail?
Look at St. Louis. I know that Jordan Binnington, they had a fucking miracle run, but look at it. How many years did they make the playoffs, and how many years were they competitive and just didn't do crap?
Yeah, trust me. I picked the Blues to win the cup like 4 times in 7 years, and they were out in the first round every time.
That's what I'm saying. So I think that they can just. I think that they'll do it. I think they'll get hot and they'll just go. I think they'll go through the Bruins.
So, what's the weakness? And this is a question for all of us. Obviously, Steve, you have Tampa Bay winning. I have Tampa Bay winning. Nick has Tampa Bay winning. What's the weakness that we see in the Bruins this year that we haven't seen in past years that we're confident in saying? Obviously, we're not saying a guarantee, but actually, Nick has Boston in 7. But what's the weakness that we're seeing in Boston this year between all 3 of us here?
I don't know if it's a particular weakness or if it's just that the strength of the Tampa Bay Lightning is kind of hard to overstate. You know, like I don't think the Bruins are a bad team, and I don't think they're particularly flawed in any area. I just think you know, in a best of 7, that Tampa Bay is going to win 4 of those 7 games, and that's it. I mean, especially if they manage to get Steven Stamkos back at some point during this series, it really tips at least the offensive balance of power in their favor, because I don't think Boston's can throw out as dynamic a top 6 as Tampa Bay can. Tampa Bay has, Braden Point, Tyler Johnson, Steven Stamkos, Nikita Kucherov, and whereas the Bruins are throwing out, yeah, their top line's good, but then their second line is Krejci, Jake DeBrusk, guys like that, and not for nothing, but that doesn't really inspire a lot of confidence when they're going out against, Nikita Kucherov and Tyler Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that specifically for the Lightning series that we have projected, I don't think the Lightning are afraid to play a Boston Bruins type game because, like I said, they've got Victor Hedman, they've got Barclay Goodrow, Blake Coleman, Pat Maroon, Anthony Cirelli, these meat and potatoes, as you like to say, type hockey players who play that 200-foot game, they play the heavy game, they play the checking game. It's hard to count out the Boston Bruins, and I don't think we're counting them out, but it's just that these teams have passed them by at this point. Tim, for you, are you afraid of the Toronto Maple Leafs trying to play Boston Bruins hockey?
That's the issue. Like I said, how when Toronto plays Tampa, they have a really young team. They really just need to play fast, aggressive hockey. And if they get stuck trying to match the Boston Bruins' size and physicality, then they'll just crumble. I don't think they'd be able to do it.
Yeah.
Even with but if they did do it, I think it would still take 7 games, and they'd be shot afterwards. I don't think they'd go any further than that. I think they'd tire themselves out completely in the series.
So Tim's banking on the Maple Leafs being able to skate past the Boston Bruins. Do you think, going back to, the Tampa Bay series as well, Tampa Bay and the Toronto Maple Leafs are fairly similar teams. Do you think that there's any chance the Tampa Bay Lightning might just skate the Bruins out of the building?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the hope, right? They don't want to have to resort to playing Bruins style of hockey if they don't have to. If they can get away with just skating at the Bruins all night and making them chase them, they'll be more than happy. And I don't think the Bruins will be able to chase them for 7 games.
Tim, are you worried about Freddie Anderson getting quote-unquote tired like we've seen him and admit to being in the past few years? Because that's been an issue that he's had.
Yeah, a little bit. But that's why I think that if they tried to play Bruins hockey, they'd just get destroyed. Because he needs to face little shots as possible. So you need to control the puck and cycle it and move it around as much as possible.
So let's play.
You almost want to play it. You almost want to play an aggressive trap.
Yeah.
And you want to just dump it out, take icings, kill time, and just literally skate down, score goals.
Well, I mean, there is something to be said for the youth of the Toronto Maple Leafs and the youth of the Tampa Bay Lightning against the age of the Boston Bruins, where if you're jumping and chasing, you're trying to make, guys like Chara and, Bergeron, Marchand work their legs, maybe over 7 games to get a little bit tired. Let's flip the script. Tim, if you had to pick between Tampa and Boston, who would you pick?
I would still pick
Did we leg out here again?
No.
Oh,
What'd you
Hello?
say?
you would still pick who?
Tampa Bay.
Steve, Tampa Bay or Boston, Toronto.
Boston.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would expect you guys to both say Boston, honestly, because, like I said, I'm banking on the will of Toronto.
Well, listen, it's a close matchup. I think between Bruins and Leafs, you never know. I just feel I'm not very confident about the Leafs' inconsistencies this year, as a hockey team, but it is there. So we will go on to the next Eastern Conference matchup. Steve, all of our brackets match up except for. Actually, none of our brackets really match up. I mean, me and Tim have the same second round matchup. So Steve will go to you. You have Philly, Carolina. How do you feel?
I think Philly wins out on this one too.
So we're sending the Flyers to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, I really don't want to, but like they're just too good not to, you know? Like
How many games?
I'm gonna go 6.
Philly in 6. Okay.
Like I said, I like Carolina a lot, but the question marks in net are just too much, and I just think Philly's playing too good right now. I mean, since the start of January, they've been the best team in the league.
That they have been very good, and they were on a very hot streak before this whole thing came to a pause. Tim, you have Washington, Philly. How do you feel?
Wow.
Hard question.
I might take Washington.
Wow. Okay. Very interesting.
I think this is based on a player personnel matchup. But the issue is, can they, like, you run into the issue? Can Capitals score? Can Flyers stop Capitals from scoring? But can they score themselves?
And you have Washington in how many games over the Philadelphia Flyers?
I think it would probably go to 6.
We're sending Washington in 6. I have Washington, Philly. I am sending the Flyers through, and I am sending the Flyers through in 7 games. Mostly 7 games because Washington does have home ice advantage in this series. So, me and Steve feel good about the Flyers. Tim, you feel good about the Capitals. Nick agrees with you. Nick's matchup of Washington-Pittsburgh, he's sending the Capitals through in 6 games over Pittsburgh. So, Steve has the Caps out in the first round. Tim, you have them going to the Eastern Conference Finals. Nick has them going to the Eastern Conference Finals. Very interesting stuff. Let's start with Steve's pick here. Philly, Carolina. Why do we feel good about Philly this year, Steve?
I just think they've just been so solid coming into the playoffs, and if the playoffs started today, they'd in theory still be on their hot streak. And I just think they're getting contributions from up and down the lineup, and their top 6 has really been lethal this year with Travis Konechny, Claude Giroux, Sean Couturier, James Van Riemsdyk, Kevin Hayes has been good for them.
Little bastard.
Even their bottom 6 is they know their role, and then like you said, they have one of the best young D-cores in the league, without a question. So it really comes down to that, and Carolina's goaltending is so suspect. I think we could get them through one round, but I don't know if we could carry them through another round like it did last year.
And to your point, Philly would have home ice advantage in your matchup. They'd be playing the wild card Carolina Hurricanes. They'd have home ice. So again, can you win in a Wells Fargo Center? That's
Right.
the biggest question.
Will Carter Hartley score a goal is even the question at this point.
So I agree. If I had to pick between Carolina, Philly, I would pick Philly probably in 5. I wouldn't even give Carolina that much. Tim, if you had to pick Carolina, Philly, what would you be picking?
I'd pick Philly in probably 6.
Yeah.
I think Carolina would maybe take 1 game in Philly, just because Philadelphia might be tired after that Pittsburgh series. I think they might take the 2nd game, and then they'd probably win a home game.
So let's go to Nick's bracket real quick. If we had another Washington-Pittsburgh Caps-Pens matchup, how would we feel about that one?
I'd probably have the Caps in 5, honestly.
Yeah, I think the goalie situation just says enough. Like, and I really think it comes to a shootout. Honestly, like, who do you really think is gonna make a bigger difference?
Yeah,
Ovechkin or Sid?
Caps Pens. I'm gonna have to go Caps in 6. But let's get to Caps Flyers because Tim and I had that as well. I want to hear your thoughts, Steve, because you have the Capitals out in round 1. How do you feel about the Caps potentially even beating the Flyers that you're so high on?
I mean, I wouldn't be all that surprised about it. I mean, I don't think the Caps are a particularly bad team. I just think like the matchups they pulled aren't particularly advantageous to them.
Hmm.
I mean, I could see them knocking off the Carolina Hurricanes. I mean, I'm banking on last year not being a fluke out of the Hurricanes, but when it comes to Philly, I just don't know if Washington. I mean, they're pretty well matched in every aspect. And again, this is banking on whether or not Braden Holtby gets hot or not is a big question. But like, I think Carter Hart is just the real deal, and I think he's been way more steady this year than Braden Holtby or Ilya Samsonov. And that's kind of where I'm basing it on.
Tim, how do you feel about Braden Holtby this year?
I don't really feel any specific way about him, honestly. Like, he's notorious for doing this. He like plays half the season crap, half the season he's good. He's good for like a week. He's bad for a few days. Like he's the most hot and cold goalie in the world, probably for no reason.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's my biggest issue with the Capitals roster this year. It's like I said, I think they're almost a perfect team. They've got great defense. I mean, they have a Norris type defenseman in John Carlson, and that's, their defensive core outside of him is no slouch either. They've gotten pretty good depth goal scoring this year. Lars Eller's had a great year for them. He's been fantastic. Ovi's been Ovi. Obviously, Backstrom's got that new contract. He's earned that as well. Their depth is there. They have grit and grind, and Ovechkin plays a heavy game. Tom Wilson plays a heavy game. I just don't like Braden Holtby, and it really worries me that he's coming into the playoffs as cold as he is. And I don't even feel particularly great about him in that Carolina Hurricane series. I still think he'd be getting lit up. I just think that Peter Mrazek or James Reimer would be getting lit up even more. And that's why I think the Capitals would end up winning. But I don't feel very good about Braden Holtby, and that's why I'm putting the Flyers through. I absolutely love the Flyers team this year. And I agree with Steve. I think Carter Hart's the real deal, especially at home. I mean, obviously the Capitals would have home ice advantage in this series. But I think you really, if all the Flyers have to do is win 2 games on the road or 1 game on the road, if they win all 3 at Wells Fargo in a 7-game series, I think that's more than doable. So that's second round here in the East. We're going over to the West. Tim, St. Louis, Colorado. How do we feel?
I think, despite my love for Colorado with the injuries, I still don't think they're back at that point. And I really think that St. Louis would just win. They just win out. I think they win out in 7. I think that's a really tough series.
7.
Just because you still have to stop the Colorado goal scoring, despite the fact that, they're a little shaken. I just don't see them stopping them, but I don't think that the Colorado Avalanche could necessarily. It'd be a shootout, in my opinion. Literally, it'd just be a big shootout the whole series.
Steve, you have Dallas, St. Louis.
I got St. Louis in 7.
We're sending the Blues to the Western Conference Finals in both brackets here. And as far as our friend goes, Nick had St. Louis, Colorado. He had St. Louis in 7. I have St. Louis, Dallas. I'm going to be the lone detractor here. I'm sending the Dallas Stars to the Western Conference Finals in yet again another 7-game series between these two teams. So I'm the only guy with St. Louis out here. The rest of you guys have St. Louis going through. Steve and Tim both have 7-game series here. So Nick agrees with you, Tim. He has St. Louis and 7-0 Colorado. Do we see any weaknesses in this St. Louis Blues team this year?
Not once they get Tarasenko back. If they don't have Tarasenko back, then yeah, their goal scoring is kind of lackluster. They lack the ability to erupt for goals in the way that like Colorado or Dallas might be able to. But with Tarasenko, I think that gives them the edge just in the fact that they have such a solid like top 9, and then they add in Tarasenko who can erupt for goals seemingly out of nowhere. So I think that overall makes them a little more dangerous, but I don't see any real weaknesses to talk about.
Tim, I wanted to ask you a question because you said this series would be a shootout. Wouldn't that benefit the Colorado Avalanche more than the St. Louis Blues?
No, not really. I don't think Philip Grubauer would be able to stand.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the goal scoring edge would go to the
That's-
Colorado Avalanche.
I
But
don't mean to be a shootout directly, because like obviously if like you're going shot for shot, then Nathan McKinnon's winning that every time. Cale McCarr's winning that. Landeskog, they're winning that every time. But when you have St. Louis Blues blocking 90% of the shots that get taken on the ice anyway, like I don't know how you're gonna, because you still, like that's exactly it. And they're gonna come down. They're gonna have probably like maybe half the shots the Avalanche do, but it won't make a difference. They'll still put up the goals.
So the reason I like the Dallas Stars over the St. Louis Blues this time is I think, like I said, last year they went 7 games, lost in overtime. I think the Stars have addressed some of their issues. Obviously, the depth goal scoring is questionable, but Denis Gurianov's had a pretty good rookie year. Rupe Hintz has had a pretty good year. I think that the Stars are more equipped to play a heavy series, and the Dallas-St. Louis would be a heavy series again. I just think if it came down to it in 7 games, I think the Stars are just a very well-rounded roster. I don't really see any major problems outside of maybe some depth goal scoring. I don't know. I like the Stars this year. But, Steve, if you had to pick St. Louis, Colorado, who would you pick?
I'm still going with St. Louis.
Still going St. Louis. Yeah, I think I would still go St. Louis in that series as well. St. Louis in 7 games. So our final Western Conference semifinals matchup, all 4 of us have Winnipeg, Edmonton. Tim, Winnipeg, Edmonton. Who's going to the Western Conference Finals? Who's got a date with the St. Louis Blues?
I still think it's Winnipeg. I just don't. I mean, my mistake. I mean, I believe it's just Edmonton. I just don't. I think that. Actually, no. I have Winnipeg. I think that Winnipeg has the size and the speed. Not necessarily the speed, but like the ferociousness to break out of those corners and to just back check on Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, who I think are the trump cards in Edmonton. And Edmonton has goalie issues. I think that Hellebuyck would play great. Not that he's really going to stop all the shots, but I think he'll make it so Winnipeg has a fighting chance, and I think that they'll just out-depth them.
How many games are we going here?
I think it only takes 6.
Very interesting. So the team at the beginning of the year that people were saying is done, they don't have the defense, Tim is sending them to the Western Conference Finals. What about you, Steve?
My matchup, I have the same matchup, right? Winnipeg,
You have Winnipeg,
and Edmonton.
Yes.
I think goaltending wins out here, and I think it's going to be Winnipeg. I think they're going to surprise everyone and get there.
Very interesting. How many
I
games?
think they'll. I feel like it would take 7. Yeah, 7. Because I don't think without a fight.
Yeah. I'm sending them too. I'm sending the Winnipeg Jets to the Western Conference Finals in 7 games. Ironically, staying in that wild card spot might be the only reason that they get there because they're playing Pacific Division teams. But, I mean, they're getting there. And Nick has Winnipeg in 6 as well. I mean, we're all sending the Jets team that said everyone said doesn't have defense. They're done. They lost, 4 out of 6 of their defensemen from last year. They're sending them to the Western Conference Finals with a date with the St. Louis Blues. So, Steve, you were going to say something about the goaltending.
Yeah, I think Edmonton's goaltending is so kind of not great that I wouldn't trust it
Kinda not great.
against Connor Hellebuck, who, for all intents and purposes, is a Vezina Trophy finalist this year, in my opinion. And I think that's really a big difference maker. Both of these teams are kind of spotty on defense. And does Edmonton have the ultimate trump card in Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl? Yeah, but I think Winnipeg's lineup is more deep than Edmonton's is, especially up front.
It's been crazy to watch this Winnipeg Jets team evolve over the course of this season because in the beginning of the season, they were looking like the Jets we thought they would be. They were hemorrhaging goals. They couldn't stop the puck to save their life. And then all of a sudden, the defense started to look like it started to figure it out. They bring in a guy at the trade deadline. They bring in Cody Eakins, who's a nice depth center. But the defenses actually look like it's starting to be a competent defensive
Didn't they
structure.
also bring in Dylan DeMello?
Yeah, and they added Dylan DeMello. I actually slipped my mind on that. They added a nice top 4 defenseman. Top 4, top 6 kind of guy. And this defense looks like it's figured it out. And that forward core is just... There are not a lot of teams that you could argue can match up against the Edmonton Oilers forward core. I think Winnipeg is one of them, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Is there...
That's
Oh, sorry, Tim, go ahead.
That's kind of what I was getting at. Like, I just think that they're just gonna end. The big thing is like the size, honestly, of the Winnipeg Jets. Like the fact that they have big forwards makes a huge difference. Because when Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are trying to go through the whole team and they have to first break through all those guys in the offensive zone, or in their defensive zone rather, it's gonna slow them down. It'll give the defense time to take an extra step or two back. Which
They're
slows
also
them.
just relentless.
That's what, like,
chasing
they're
down the
ferocious.
puck.
That's what I'm saying.
Like,
They want it.
Winnipeg's forecheck is honestly kind of oppressive when it's played right. Like, and this is to your point, right? That Edmonton isn't known for a tenacious forecheck. Yeah, their game's simple, and I was saying earlier they forecheck hard. And they do, but they score off the rush because they have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, who are practically always on the ice, right? Those guys are averaging like 27 minutes a night or something stupid. So, but where you have Winnipeg, who's known for having a big forward core and is known for being heavy, and I mean, they don't give you time to breathe, really, let alone move the puck clean. So, I just think Edmonton's just kind of outmatched in that sense. And when you force Edmonton to defend, you're really kind of forcing them into a position they don't want to be in, you know?
Exactly.
Especially with the goaltender that they have, they really don't want to be in their own end.
Right, they want to get the puck and go.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, we keep talking about the weakness of the defense there in Winnipeg, but I mean, honestly, like, I don't know. I feel like it's starting to figure it out, and it's just been something really magical to see.
Well, they're young, so like, given enough time, yeah, they kind of figured it out, you know? Which is good. We thought they would. I thought it'd be next season, but...
So, very interestingly enough, the team last season that was supposed to be a Stanley Cup contender who got knocked out in the first round, I think?
Yeah, I think they got knocked off by,
It was St. Louis,
Dallas.
wasn't it?
Might have been St. Louis.
Yeah, because Dallas played Nashville last year, so... Interestingly enough, the supposedly Stanley Cup champion team from last year, who was out in round 1, is going to the Western Conference Finals here in our Magic Land here, so... We'll get right to the next matchup here, Eastern Conference Finals. Steve, you have Tampa, Philly. Who are you sending through?
Tampa in 6.
Tampa Bay in 6. Once again, another story of a team that was supposed to be there last year is getting there this year. Tampa Bay in 6.
It's just Tampa. Not for nothing, if Tampa can go through in my bracket can make its way through Boston, I really don't think there's a lot of teams in that conversation that are going to stop them. And while I think Philly's a good team, they're just not on the same level as Boston.
Tim, you have the complete opposite matchup. You have Toronto, Washington in your Eastern Conference Finals. Who is going to the Stanley Cup?
It's hard to say, honestly, because honestly, the Washington Capitals do everything that the Toronto Maple Leafs do, just better.
So we are sending the Caps through.
Yeah, I'm sending the Caps through. Are we doing games for that, or?
How many games you got?
Oh, fuck. It'd probably only take. Honestly, I think that it'd probably take 5 games. I think that'd be a late round blowout. I don't think that Toronto would be able to keep up their pace.
I am with Steve. I have the Lightning Flyers. I have the Lightning going through in 5 games. So me and Steve differ a little bit there. Nick has Boston, Washington. Nick is sending the Boston Bruins back to the Stanley Cup Finals for a 2nd straight year. So, you think this is kind of the end of the line here for the Flyers' magic run, Steve?
Yeah, I just think that they're just running. I mean, there's nothing to be ashamed of, right? For a young team that we really weren't even talking about at the beginning of this year, I mean, this is kind of a perfect scenario for them, right? Because now you have something to build on. I just think this is a situation where a team that, it's finally their time to come, their time has come due, like they deserve this.
Yeah.
They've been good for so long.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I have, like I said, I have the Lightning in 5 just because I think the Flyers are a great team. I think they're probably the strongest team in the Metropolitan Division. I just don't like the matchup. I think Lightning, like I said, are just a perfectly well-rounded team. They fixed all the issues. They've got everything you could ever ask from them. The goal scoring, the depth, the grit, the grind, the goaltending, the defense. And they figured it out. The fact that they stuck with John Cooper, the fact that they went through that rough stretch in the beginning of the season, they're a team that's been through a lot. They know how to lose, and they finally figured it out. And I like their chances against a very young. I think by this point, the Flyers' young defensemen might start to get a little weary. A little big stage fright sort of situation. And between Carter Hart and Andre Vasilevsky, as much as I love Carter Hart, I mean, you'd still have to go with the big cat, right? You'd have to go with Andre Vasilevsky.
Yeah, you can't not.
Tim, if you had to pick Philly, Tampa, who would you pick? Because that is...
I think Tampa.
I agree. Before we go to Tim's bracket, we'll just go Boston, Washington. Who would you guys pick out of that series?
Boston.
Yeah, I
Goaltending.
agree.
Goaltending wins that one. Easy.
So that's a good question, though. If you say goaltending wins that one, how do you feel about the Capitals' ability to play against such a high-powered offense in Toronto?
Like I said, I think that they just do everything better.
They're just better, coach.
Yeah, it's really just their better coach argument. I think that they just do everything better than them.
Steve, if you had to pick Toronto, Washington.
Probably Washington.
Yeah, I would give
Washington's
Washington.
a little bigger, a little nastier.
Yeah, I'm not.
And they've been there
thrilled.
before.
I'm not thrilled with the Washington Capitals goaltending either. I think it would take more than 5 games, but
I'm really not a fan of Toronto's defense.
yeah. As much as I don't like Braden Holtby this year, I really don't like that defense, and I don't like that team construction just in general. So we've made it here. Stanley Cup Finals. We have all 3 of us have different matchups. All 4 of us actually. None of us have the same matchup. Oh wait, no, we didn't do the West. What am I talking about? What's wrong with me? Steve, we all have everyone. St. Louis, Winnipeg. Jump the gun there. I'm going to the Stanley Cup. We haven't even finished the West yet.
I mean, you might as well go to the Stanley Cup, right? Because I think like St. Louis is just kind of this season, anyways, in a different league than that Winnipeg Jets team. As much as I think the Winnipeg Jets are great, and I think they're having a Cinderella run, just St. Louis is just St. Louis, you know.
So how fast are we ending the Cinderella run?
Honestly, it might be a late round blowout. It might be like 5 games.
St. Louis in 5. Tim, St. Louis, Winnipeg. Does your Cinderella run end in the Western Conference Finals?
Honestly, I don't think so.
Whoa, are you sending Winnipeg to the Stanley Cup?
Yeah, I think I'm a big proponent of getting hot and going through. It happens every year.
My goodness. How many games? I like it. I like it.
Honestly, I think it'd probably take 6 games.
Wow. I love the bold choice. Not even 7 games. He said, no, we're going there in 6.
I would like to say 5, but that's just not giving St. Louis enough credit for what they really can do.
I have what's it called? Dallas, Winnipeg, instead of St. Louis, Winnipeg. I'm sending the Dallas Stars to your Stanley Cup Finals, and I'm sending them in 5 games. I think the Cinderella run has to come to an end at some point, and I think it's going to come to an end at the hand of the Dallas Stars. Nick had St. Louis in 6 over Winnipeg. Tim is the only one sending Winnipeg to the Stanley Cup Finals. Let's talk about Winnipeg as a team. Because, Steve, you have them out in 5 games, and Tim's sending them to the Stanley Cup. So something's gone disconnected here.
I just think Winnipeg's defense, like we said, is kind of patchwork. And yeah, are they playing above where we thought they were? But they're running into a team in St. Louis that's just head and shoulders better than they are. I mean, this is a win now St. Louis Blues, you know what I mean? This is a rebuilding Winnipeg. This is a retooling Winnipeg team. This is a team that had really high expectations last year, and this year is kind of living up to last year's expectations, weirdly enough. But I still think that this is just, I mean, like St. Louis is just too good. Their goaltending is, they're even in net. Winnipeg might have the edge in forwards, but St. Louis defense is like the ultimate equalizer. If anybody's going to stop Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele and Patrick Laine, it's going to be, you know, Colton Parayko and Alex Pietrangelo and guys like that.
Tim, counter argument. Because you got to have a counter argument. You send them to the Stanley Cup Finals. Did we? I might have dropped again. Did I drop? Hello? Yeah, I dropped again.
I'm patiently taking a second to think.
Oh, sorry. I didn't hear anybody, so I thought I dropped again.
No, I'm patiently taking a second to think. I don't really. Honestly, like I said, it would really just come down to them having the Cinderella run. I don't think that they're better on paper. I really don't think that they do anything really better than them, per se. I think that you just have to, like, it really just come down to, like, playing better that night.
Interesting. I mean, I would be shocked. I love the Winnipeg Jets team, but I have to say that would be the biggest shock, in my opinion, if they went through to the Stanley Cup Finals. I know I'm putting them in the Western Conference Finals, so it's like, well, you think they're a good team, but a large part of that, in my opinion, the reason that they're going through is because they're playing in the Pacific Division, which is a weaker division this year. I gotta say, I would be very surprised, but would I like it? Yeah, I love the Jets. I love watching them play.
I mean, I wouldn't be complaining either.
So now we're at the Stanley Cup Finals, and all 4 of us have different Stanley Cup Final matchups, which is great. It's awesome. I love it. Nick has a rematch, Boston, St. Louis, and he's flipping the script. He's sending the Boston Bruins to your Stanley Cup champions in 7 games. How do we feel about that one?
I feel like Nick just sucks off the Boston Bruins in his spare time. Um,
I mean, I could see why, but
Yeah,
I
I know.
also could
I-
don't agree. I mean, if Boston wasn't able to do it last year, I don't think this team is any particularly better than last year's team. And if anything, I think the St. Louis team is better this year than they were last year.
if you're putting St. Louis through, I have St. Louis beating them.
Yeah.
It's not much of like it's not that it's like a blowout or anything, but like we
They kind of
said,
just proved they could do it already.
like I said when I kicked Boston out of my bracket, I think that their defense would just kind of get run around on. Not that their defense is bad, but
It's not particularly mobile.
yeah, their defense is more of, hey, we're in the zone, we're gonna cycle it out. Hey, we're in the defensive zone. Hey, we're just gonna fucking cycle it out, change, dump it.
Do you think
Let Pasta fucking go down with a breakaway.
Do you think there's anything to be said for maybe this year and there's not so much of an element of surprise on the St. Louis Blues side in that Stanley Cup matchup?
Maybe, but there's no element of surprise for the Boston Bruins either.
Very true.
Like we know Boston's game. It's not really.
But then, like, they played each other last year. They know kind of what to expect at this point. So I think in terms of just pound for pound, no surprises. Like two evenly matched teams. I think St. Louis managed to come out on the end of it 7 games again.
Yeah, I think if I had to pick a Boston St. Louis matchup, I would pick St. Louis in 7 again. So we'll go over to Steve. You have St. Louis, Tampa Bay. Who do we feel? Who are we sending through? 2 teams. Obviously, the Lightning coming off a really tough year last year. The St. Louis, a miracle run last year. Do we have the Tampa Bay Lightning finally getting that core of their Stanley Cup, or do we have repeat in St. Louis play Gloria?
See, I know I was just talking like hyping up the St. Louis Blues a lot, but I really just like this Tampa Bay team right now. Like like you said, there's really no big holes in the roster, and I just think they're more dynamic and more dangerous than St. Louis's offense.
How many games are we saying for the Lightning to win the Stanley Cup?
Game 7, it's got to be. St. Louis isn't a team that's going to roll over in 5. Anything less than 6 or 7, I don't think.
So interesting. Steve is saying the Tampa Bay Lightning finally get their cup. It's a matchup of 2 teams that play fairly different games. I have to agree with you. I think if this came to Tampa Bay St. Louis, I would say the Tampa Bay Lightning would win this series in 7 games. I love the Tampa Bay Lightning roster, and like you said, it's not really like, oh, there's a hole in the Blues roster, or there's a hole in this part of the Blues game. It's just 2 great hockey teams.
And it's just, I think Tampa's a little more lethal up front. Like, they have guys that, they have more guys that if you give them like a small opening, they're going to take a mile from you, They're going to get that opening and score. Whereas St. Louis is more about just wearing you down and trying to win to get you to make a mistake, whereas Tampa doesn't need you to make a mistake, honestly. They'll just make their openings for themselves.
Yeah, and as much as we love Jordan Ice and the Binnington, if it came down to a series of Binnington and Vasilevsky, the big cat, I'd probably take Vasilevsky in 7 games.
Yeah, I really can't bet against Vasilevsky.
I mean, he's looking like he's having another Vezina-type season this year. So I'd agree, Tim, if you had St. Louis, Tampa.
I really don't have much more to say outside of what you guys said. I think that St. Louis' only possible saving grace would be really Ryan O'Reilly scoring more bullshit fucking goals in the finals. Like, I don't know what to tell you, like that fucking
Captain
the hook's
Hook.
motherfucking stick out there.
With the ice pick.
Yeah, bro.
Captain Hook.
Yeah, I don't know what Captain Hook's gonna fucking do out there. Maybe he'll start fucking Svechnikoving in from like the corner. I don't know.
So, Tim, you have Winnipeg, Washington. A very interesting matchup. Probably the most interesting matchup you could get out of this bracket is probably saying Winnipeg, Washington, unless you were so bold as to say the Blue Jackets are going to the Stanley Cup final.
WW, baby.
This-
WXW.
Tough series, tough question. Are we giving Ovi another cup, or are we giving
No.
giving the Jets a cup a year later than they were supposed to?
Nah, I'm giving it to the Jets.
Wow. The Winnipeg Jets with that
Can't
patchwork
say I was
defense.
expecting that one.
I think that the Capitals are making it there by the skin of their teeth. I think they're playing a lot of tough games. I think they're tired. I don't think that they're coming out strong. I think Winnipeg is coming out hot. I think they're coming in like the LA Kings.
That's honestly very fair.
I think
Winnipeg
they're coming in
in
strong. They're gonna come in and they're gonna fucking blow out the Capitals at home.
how many games?
It's gonna take 6 games. Like I'm not a fool.
I thought you were gonna say Winnipeg in
No.
4.
No, but they're gonna come out and take that first win big first win. They'll probably lose the next 2
Wow.
games. They'll win their second game at home, and then they'll win the next 2.
Winnipeg Jets in 6 games.
Bold, I like it.
Steve, Winnipeg, Washington.
I can't bet against Washington, really. As much as I like Winnipeg, I don't know.
No, that's totally fair.
There's something about that defense that's really my issue. Is like I just don't think it's gonna compete against John Carlson and Michael Kemney and
I
guys like
totally see
that.
the argument. Like I said, this is
Yeah, no, dude, I respect
it's
the
like
hell
my
out of your
Toronto.
bet.
I think I just dropped. Oh no. Hold up, boys. Technical difficulties here. Yeah, just give me a second. I'll be back online in a sec here, boys. Having some technical difficulties. Hello? Oh no. Whoa. Hello?
Uh-oh, he's back. Okay. I was like, uh-oh.
Did Tim have to BRB?
I guess he might be in his TeamSpeak channel. Yeah.
Nah, I'm here.
Sorry, the last thing I heard was it's like Toronto.
It's like Toronto. It's really like will driven more than anything. The run of the Winnipeg Jets, except it's a lot more feasible.
I have to say, if I had to pick Winnipeg, Washington, I almost want to pick the Jets because I don't like Braden Holtby this year. But I think I would give it to Washington in 7. But man, I would love to see the Jets make a miracle run. If the Jets win the Cup this year, that'd be awesome. I would absolutely love that.
Yeah, bro. I'd be part of the whiteout. It'd be wild.
The Winnipeg Whiteout coming soon to the Stanley Cup Finals, according to Tim. And gotta be honest, could I see it happening? I think if there was any team in this bracket that was gonna pull off a Cinderella run, it would be the Winnipeg Jets. I think we could all agree on that, right?
Yeah.
Out
I
of
don't think a lot of other teams would be considered Cinderella runs, right? Like, if Dallas did it, it'd be like, oh, okay, well, Dallas is good enough to do this. Like, we expected this of them.
well, I mean, like out of the wild card, so out of Winnipeg, Nashville, Columbus, Carolina, if any team has the potential to do it, I think it's the Jets.
Yeah, I'd have to agree.
So I had Dallas, Tampa Bay, and as I've said many times before, I'm picking the Stars. We're sending the Stars. They're going to earn their second franchise Stanley Cup over the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I always flip back and forth on how many games it's going to take, but I honestly think if these two teams met, it would have to be Dallas in 7. I just love the Stars team this year. I don't see a glaring weakness aside from depth goal scoring, but we've seen plenty of teams kind of get through without that depth goal scoring before. It's one of the least important problems, I would say, although it's an issue. It's definitely an issue. But it's an issue that you can get away with under the right circumstances. I have to say, I think Tampa Bay would probably win the first 2 games of this series at home, and it would kind of just be not good. But I think once the Stars get acclimated to how the Lightning play, if the Stars can physically impose their will, if the Stars can slow down that high-pressured offense, if Ben Bishop can plug the holes that he's had, I'm picking Dallas in 7. How do you, Steve, feel about Dallas Tampa Bay?
It's tough. I mean, I could honestly see it going either way. Like, it's kind of how I felt about Tampa Bay St. Louis, right? Like, they both have their pluses. Dallas and St. Louis are both defensively probably better than Tampa, but so I don't know. I mean, I'd have to bank on my Tampa Bay Lightning still, but like I could see Dallas doing it.
Tim, Dallas, Tampa Bay.
Ben Bishop, baby.
Big Ben Bishop.
Big double B, baby.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I love the Stars team. I love what they're doing this year. It's a great hockey team to watch. So very cool that we all end up with 4 different Stanley Cup Finals. The last thing I want to do before we go, kind of quickly, we're just gonna go through each of the Stanley Cup Finals and we'll pick Conn Smythe. So if the Blues and the St. Louis Blues Bruins meet again, who do you think would get to Conn Smythe?
Blues Bruins. Probably Jordan Binnington, honestly.
So you'd pick the Blues to win, right? We said that, and you'd pick Jordan Binnington. Okay, I'd agree. I think if the Blues are going to win the cup again this year, it's going to have to be Jordan Binnington standing on his head again. Although I could see Alex Pietrangelo having a good run.
Yeah, I could too.
Tim, if it was Blues Bruins, who gets the Conn Smythe?
You think Pietrangelo, really?
I think if this team's going to repeat, it's going to have to be one of Binnington or Pietrangelo stepping up crazy.
You don't think anyone else could step up, really?
I mean, Ryan O'Reilly did it last year, but I think he kind of... If Ryan O'Reilly wasn't as good as he was, and that scoring that he had was spread out, it would have been Jordan Binnington. I think he kind of sniped that Conn Smythe from Jordan Binnington last year. Especially after that Game 7 performance. I mean, come on. That game is over if not for Jordan Binnington.
I would probably say Binnington, but... Yeah, no, I'd probably say him. But if I were to say somewhere else, I might give it... You know... A lot of different players on that team. But then there's no one, like... A lot of passers who score goals.
Yeah.
It's kind of the issue, right? So, like, anyone could really do it. Like, David Perron could honestly come out and bust out like an animal.
He was huge for them last year. He scored a lot of big goals.
That's what I'm saying. A lot of big goals. And he's not afraid to, get a little down and dirty. Come down and make a big presence.
St. Louis, Tampa, Steve. Who's your Conn Smythe?
Kucherov.
Nikita Kucherov.
I think Kucherov ends up with like a 35, 40-point run in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think he's a real difference maker.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think Nikita Kucherov would be my number 1 pick. My number 2 pick would probably be, obviously, Big Cat, Vasilevsky. But I would agree with you. I'd give it to Kucherov. Tim, St. Louis, Tampa Bay, who would end up being Conn Smythe out of that series? Assuming you have Tampa Bay winning. Or you could give it to the losing team. It's happened before. John Sebastian Giguere would like to say hi.
Did I say Tampa Bay was going to win?
I don't remember what you said, to be honest with you.
I could have swore I said... Alright, well,
No, you had Winnipeg winning, yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't know what the fuck he's talking about.
No, I'm saying...
I mean, I don't think I had that matchup.
No, I'm saying if this was the Stanley Cup final matchup, St. Louis, Tampa Bay, who would be the Conn Smythe winner?
Probably Bennington. I think St. Louis wins.
Winnipeg, Washington. Tim, who's your Conn Smythe winner? I think the answer's kind of clear, but...
It's got to be Hellbjörk.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, like we said, how Ryan O'Reilly kind of sniped that. I could easily see someone in Winnipeg, whether it be Line or Wheeler or one of their key guys, like, showing up big time in the playoffs. Kyle Connor, Scheifele, like, one of these guys would come out and I think would make a really big difference. But if none of them did it, it'd be Hellbjörk.
Steve, do you have anybody besides Connor Hellebuyck winning this Conn Smythe?
I mean, maybe Blake Wheeler. he might be able to snipe it, but no, I think Hellebuck's probably like the bar, like the head and shoulders favorite.
Yeah, I
Or
think
Hellebuck, yeah.
I think if Winnipeg goes anywhere in this playoffs, it's going to be on the back of. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I sent them to the Western Conference Finals, but I think if they win the Stanley Cup, it's got to be on the back of Connor Hellebuck, right?
Pretty
Kind
much.
of where it is. Like, it would really come down to someone sniping it away, like Ryan O'Reilly.
And then last but not least, Tampa Bay Dallas. Who would be your Conn Smythe winner? This is a tough one because Dallas really doesn't have a lot of superstars. I mean, they have Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, Ben Bishop. But I think if the Dallas Stars go on to win the Stanley Cup, it's going to be because Ben Bishop plugs the holes that he's got. He stops the leaky goals, and I think Ben Bishop would win the Conn Smythe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be
Fair.
Ben Bishop if anything. Yeah, it kind of have to be.
I could see maybe Tyler Seguin having a miracle run or Jamie Benn scoring some big goals, but I think if the Stars win the cup, it's going to be because Ben Bishop
Or
finally...
someone might snipe it. There might be like Klingberg might have a hell of a run and snipe it. You know.
That's very true. But that is it. That was our Stanley Cup build your bracket based on today's standings. Do you guys have any final say or any final thoughts on any of this?
No, I think that's it. Most we can do with hockey being suspended. So.
Yeah,
Yep.
like I said, we're going to continue the content for you guys. We're going to do some more fun things. Maybe next week we'll try to get some more guys together and we'll start talking like favorite teams, favorite moments, something along those lines. All we can hope for now is that hockey does come back in some capacity. I think it's really interesting that we all ended up with 4 different Stanley Cup final matchups and 4 different winners. Nobody, even though a couple of us had, a couple of you guys, we both had Tampa Bay, me and Steve, but we have 4 different winners. It's very interesting to me. I think this would be an awesome bracket just because of how many rivalries there are, but that's going to do it for this episode. Like I said, stay tuned. We are going to try to get out more content for you guys. We're going to try to get some guys together. Maybe next week we'll talk, I don't know, top favorite moments of the decade or who do you think the best team of the decade was or something along those lines. But stay tuned. I want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Steve and Tim, for sitting through this with me and building a bracket live on the air, so to speak. Yeah, that's it. We will catch you guys next time.
See ya.